This weekend, I'm joining the Snapshots for the Saturday Sketch Challenge, and it's a scrapbook page and a card that I'll be creating. So here are the two sketches that I'm doing, and I am starting off with this sheet from Woods DSP, and then I'm bringing in a piece of glacier, which is very similar to, I believe, Pool Party in the Stampin' Up world. I'm just using up some old pieces that I have from my close to my heart stash. And I'm putting this down so that there's probably 1.5 inches for 2 inches at the top and another inch at the bottom. It's just whatever size scrap I had, honestly, that's going to go in the middle of that page. And then I'm bringing in an old close to my heart ruler that allows me to poke holes, and I am going to go around all 4 sides, and I use the edge as my guide to figure out how far in to go. And I did this all the way around my whole layout. I won't make you watch all 4 sides, but I put the holes all the way through. And at first when I started, I thought, yeah, I'll do some stitching. And I do this all the time. I think I'll do some stitching. And then I look and I'm like, oh, I don't think I really want to do all that stitching. So I'll come back in later and just do some faux stitching, but it does have authentic holes, at least on it this time. And now I'm going to be bringing in some die cuts, and I'm actually using the, let me see, it's the Party Banners dies, and I'm cutting both of my pictures, and I'm going to secure it down with just a tad bit of washi tape. And my picture is not quite tall enough for that die, but I really just want to get the bottom swoop on it cut out so that all of my banners will match. And did you notice I put that at a bit of an angle? The ones that are really squared off, like the top of these banners, actually do better going through the die cut machine when I put it at an angle and they don't go straight in as a full flush straight edge. And so I'm doing that to both of these pictures. This other one was a small, it should have been cut down to 4x4 picture, and this little banner die will help me cut it down so that it's about a 4x4. The other one was probably about 4x 4.5 or 5, probably. It was a little bit taller. And then I'm going to bring in the back side of some DSP from Wildly Flowering, just because I like the texture side of it. And it just had a really nice texture to it. It almost looked like linen material or something like that. So I'm going to cut down some of these. Do you see the flowers on the other side? And then I'm also going to cut down a piece of Petal pink cardstock. And you're going to see that I'm going to come in with these same papers and use some of the reverse side later on to make a card. So stay tuned for that card. But I'm working on all of these, and I just thought those party banner dies were perfect for cutting all of my pieces, including my pictures. So don't think that you can't cut pictures with die cuts. You can. It's a great design element to have them just go along with everything else. So I picked a smaller die to do the 2 little banners that are going to go on the end. And since I used such large dies, it won't be quite to scale like what my sketch showed, but I think that's all right. You still see some of the swoop for each of them, and you realize that it's probably another banner in the background. So for this Petal pink, I actually did 2 sizes down, I think, from what I did from that tan colored linen. And I'm going to layer some up. You'll see that in a few minutes. Now this one is from Stylish Shapes dies, and the piece of paper I'm cutting out is from the Country Woods. And it is not long enough. The die is not long enough for me. So what I'm doing here is hanging that paper over the edge of my plates, and I'm not going to the full end of my die. So this will cut the beginning of the die, and then I'm going to move my die down and line it all up, move my die down and secure it again with some washi tape or some low tack tape, and then I'm going to hang it off the other end because I don't want the die to cut all the way through. I want that to be a longer banner than what I originally had. So do you see how it's sticking out some? And I line up my plates carefully so I don't cut the whole way through on that die. And watch this. You see my short die, and magically the die cut is longer. Isn't that awesome? So you can really extend the size of these dies if you are careful where you layer them over the edge of your dies. Okay, here you can see where I layered up those two party banner dies. And now I'm just going around. I use these Stampin' Spots all the time. I get them. I don't buy them directly, but I get them in my little card kits or in my paper pumpkin kits. And they are just the perfect size to travel with. They're the perfect size to work on small little areas like this. And I can really get in there, and I just like using them, and they're handy. I keep them right on a cart right by my desk. So I'm going to go around all of these party banner dies, and I want to cross that shape that I'm using, that stylish shape banner die that's going to be at the bottom of my page as well. And it just kind of outlines and will make these stand out just the slightest bit. So, and I'm using the Night of Navy, I believe, for the Stampin' Spot. So it's a darker blue than what I'm actually is featured in these papers that I have. And then I'm going to set that aside, and I'm going to start adhering some of these banners down. So I want to lay these out and make sure that everything lines up how I want, and figure out how I want my swoop to go. So when you're doing banners, they could be a really deep swoop, or it could be kind of shallow. And I figured I wanted it to come down about 1 inch from the middle of that cardstock. So I've got to figure the angle. Oh, and here I'm coming in with my navy blue Le Pen, and I am just going to start putting in my faux stitching. And I will go around all 4 sides and go from one poked hole to the next, and just keep putting in my faux stitching lines. Now, I will say I did better lines when I was going down and pulling it towards me, as opposed to going up and going away from me. For some reason, when I come towards myself, I make a much straighter line. And when I go away from myself, it doesn't tend to stay as straight and squared up. Okay, so here I start to decide on the angle, and I'm looking to see if this will work. So I swoop those 2 blue ones, and then I put in my pictures, and then the one in the middle, I'm going to put the first one underneath the pictures and the second one on the top of my pictures. So my sketch showed a journaling spot between the pictures, and I don't usually like feature my journaling to that degree. Usually it's just a little afterthought spot and I feature the pictures more. But this one, I think I'm going to pop it up in the middle between my pictures. So I'm adding down these banners. Yes, they are hanging off the edge, so I will be trimming those in just a minute. And I know that I'm coming down about 1 inch from the middle, and I didn't make this precisely squared up in the middle because it's a party banner. So I didn't want it to look too squared off, if that makes sense. I just kind of had it slightly at an angle so that it looked more like a party banner and not something real precise. And then I'm going to add my pictures down. And the nice thing about these pictures is where I'm overlapping my journaling spot, it does not cover anything too important in either picture. Like, it really doesn't cover anything important at all, like part of the wall in each one for the most part. So I'm putting that little banner at the bottom. I'll trim off the overhang from the 2 side banners. And then I need to think about my title. So I want to use one of our alphabet die sets. I happen to have 2 of them here at the time, and I just wanted to fit on that little banner that I have at the bottom of the page. And so I think I want it to say dog mom. So I'm going to bring in my mini alphabet dies. And the nice thing about these dies is when I put them down on the back of that wildly flowering blue linen type of print, I can cut all of the letters at one time. It does multiples of some letters. So like I have 2 O's in the title, Dog Mom. So I have 2 O's. I only have 1 M, but I think it's okay because I also have a W and I can just turn that upside down. So in one pass through my die cutting machine, I have the full title, Dog Mom. And I'm going to separate out those letters and then set the rest of them aside. And then when I put those letters on my little banner, I noticed that I think I want that blue to be a little bit bolder. So I'm going to bring in a scrap piece of paper and just run across it with a couple of strips of adhesive just so I can hold these letters in place and they don't keep shifting all over the scrap piece of paper. And then I'm going to bring in that Night of Navy Stampin' Spot and one of my blending brushes, and I'm just going to go through and darken this blue up a little bit so that it really is a little bit more defined. And what I like about using the blending brush is sometimes it makes the edges a little bit darker too, just because of that's where it starts and stops. And so it gives some definition to the letters and it darkens them up a little bit. And then that's going to be perfect for my title, and it will stand out quite a bit more. Now, when you're looking at it on camera, the last M in the title looks like it's kind of lost on the gray, but in real life, it stands out much more than you can tell in the photos, if that makes sense. The camera just doesn't, even with the lighting that I have set up in my studio, it just doesn't stand out quite as much as it does in real life. So trust me, that last M does stand out a lot more. And as you can see here, the G stands out a whole lot more against that blue than it did before, because the blues were just a little bit different in the shading before, and now it stands out a whole lot more. So I promise you that M stands out more in person than you can tell. So that'll be my title, and I'm usually making bigger titles, but I think this is kind of simple and it works for this particular page. And I kept things pretty close to scale for that title as what they had for that little banner strip on my sketch. So I really liked that. And by adding the extra sheet of cardstock across the middle of the page, it gave it a little bit more character, and the DSP that looks like the wood paneling gives it a little bit more character too, because sometimes these sketches need a little bit to give more visual interest to them once you lay them out, but it gives you a good stepping off point. So I liked that those 2 things really made the banner and pictures all pop off the page more than if I had just used that DSP. It was just a little bit overwhelming for the DSP to be the whole background. So here we go. I have also cut out a couple of circles with a 3 1/4 circle punch, and I am running those through my Stampin' Spot, and I had die cut a heart out of, I think it was the iconic imagery. I just looked for a small heart that I could die cut out and put between the words dog and mom for the title, and I edged that with the ink as well. And there were a couple of circles along the banner on the sketch, and so I was able to add those, and I will use those as spots to add some journaling as well. So I actually want to pop all 3 of these it's petal pink. It kind of comes off as peach here, but it's petal pink is the cardstock. So I'm going to go in and journal. And what I end up writing is that Zeke and Jax are our Shelties. Ollie is our Sheltie grandpup that we raised for his first 7 years for Waverly. That's our daughter. Ollie comes over often to play with Zeke, and he mostly tolerates Jax and his puppy antics. So you'll see on the left, I have Zeke and Jax, and then on the right, I have Jax in my arms, and then Zeke, and that's Zeke's normal spot. If he has his first choice of where he's going to sit, it's going to be right there by my knee. And then we have Ollie, who's over to play with them for the day. Now, I've scrapbooked about my dogs before, but you might not have noticed the new pup because I haven't scrapbooked a lot about him. We kind of had a love-hate relationship as soon as he came to my house because he came in March. I like to get puppies in June when I have time to work with them when I'm on my summer break. And John got him in March. And so I was trying to potty train him and still not be home during the day and just work on training with him. But this summer, we officially finally mastered potty training, and we were able to get him trained on his invisible fence. He did not train nearly as easily as my other Shelties have. He's a little bit more stubborn than the other ones have been to train. But I mean, Ollie comes over and he does not even have a collar on that works with our invisible fence, and he minds the fence line just fine. My other Shelties never tested it like Jax will still do every once in a while. So yes, I'm finally to the point that I love Jax, and as long as he's not chewing my curling iron cord or something like that, all the rugs in the house, yeah, he's kind of grown on me now. So I've officially accepted him as one of my dogs, and I'm to the point that I can finally scrapbook about him without too much frustration. But he had to grow on me a little bit. Okay, time for the card. Let's move on. So I have brought in some boho blue cardstock, which was one of our in colors that has retired, and made a card base. And then I'm going to use some more of that like linen looking background paper from Wildly Flowering, and I'm going to use that as the layer on my card. You can see that off to the right underneath my handle. And now I'm going to use the Spotlight on Nature dies, and I'm going to cut out some of these beautiful flowers that are on the Wildly Flowering DSP. And I really liked this big one, and I cut that out as the big feature one. And then I found another smaller flower that I could have for the next smaller element on the front of the card, and I'm going to cut that out. And then I'm going to cut out from the, I think it's from that linen looking blue paper on the back of one of these flowers. I'm going to cut out some just miscellaneous other small circles that I can use on the front of the card, and I cut off plenty of them, so I'm actually going to use all of those and even decorate a little bit on the inside of the card. So I think I'm finally done with my die cutting for the day, and I'm going to move on to assembling this card. And it actually goes very quickly because those flowers are just beautiful elements that I can use right on the front of the card. So I cut this paper for the background at 5 3/8 by 4 1/8, and it just gave the smallest bit of that boho blue peeking out around the edges, and I love how that looks. And then I'm going to bring in these others and just start layering them up. So that smaller one that's on the tannish color for the flower, it did not make quite a full circle because I wanted a specific flower and centered up on my die. So I just layered another circle over the edge of it, and now you can't even tell that it wasn't a full circle, that it was just barely off the edge of the page when I had cut it. So I like to have the inside matching the same. This one I only cut to 4 by 5 1/4. So there's a little bit bigger edge peeking out around it on the inside. And then you notice I layered a couple more of those little circles on the inside. And then I'm going to bring a scrap of paper. The first little scrap that I looked at, it's not quite big enough for my stamps. So in the Spotlight on Nature stamp set, there's a couple of beautiful sentiments inside, and they're in a very beautiful script handwriting. And so I'm going to use the one that says thanks, because I seem to go through a lot of thank you cards, and I'm just going to stamp it up in that Night of Navy and put it right there on that little scrap of paper. And then I'll just figure out how far I can make it peek out and still show, but not cover too much of that big flower that I liked on the front of the card. So I want to come down enough that I'm mostly just covering the stem of that flower and not too much of the flower itself. And I think that looks pretty good. And then I'm just going to come in with a few rhinestone basic jewels and decorate the front and the inside. And you know that I love these. They remind me a lot of the Bitty Sparkles from Close to My Heart. They're just between the Bitty Sparkle and the regular size sparkles that we had. This is like perfectly right in between those two sizes. So you can actually see them a little bit better. They don't get lost on my desk quite so much, but here's what we have for my final card. And another quick look at what the layout looks like, and it matches my sketch perfectly. Like, comment, share, and subscribe for more crafty inspiration.